towards the left-right sequence at front door. Restart lap with Gus Burton holding on to what looks about a half second, 7/10 of a second advantage over Kean Jewis. So it's a bit bigger than it was before the safety car as they go through. The key thing is that Theo Edgerton is now beginning to hang on to them in third place. They've pulled away from Josh Malin in the number 90 car in fourth, Adam Smalley fifth, Will Martin in sixth, and Hugo Ellis slipped back down. He's 15th place. But Ellis and Stanton both ahead of Stanton and Sherwood, 2 AMs now. Sherwood obviously much closer than he was to Josh Stanton now, to battling for AM class honours. Can he finally end this run that Josh Stanton has had? The multiple and reigning champion with what was a 1 second deficit before the safety car, now down to about 4/10 of a second, number 7 Justin Sherwood. So Will Martin, his charge sort of stymied by that wide moment just before the race got going at full speed again. He's now struggling to get back onto terms with Adam Smalley. The lead group make their way through the right-hander at Oggies. Gus Burton accelerates towards the right-hander at Williams. Get the power as quickly as you can there, because it's a long run before you hit the brakes again at the end of that Bentley straight. But there's a curve on the exit to that corner, I'm told, with quite a big drop off at the end of the curve. You go over the curve, and it's damaging the car and the tyres, so be a little bit careful through there. Under the shadow of the bridge they go. Sector of the lap brings Kean Jewis closer than he's ever been in this race now to the tail of Gus Burton, almost underneath his rear wing as they go into the right-hander at Riches. So the gap is down to less than 2/10 at the end of the lap. It's down to about half a tenth of a second now as they go through the right-hander at Wilson and taking a defensive line through the hairpin for the first time is Gus Burton. He's having to cover himself off. The tight line in means he goes wide on the way out of the corner, but that's okay because the left-hander coming up at Palmer will favour that tighter line. So Gus Burton on the defensive now, making that a very wide Porsche in the 57 machine. And he's under a big attack though, flashing the headlights to try and put him off. In the mirrors is Kean Jewis. He sends it out wide through Agostini to try and cut back then for the inside line, and the charge up towards the left-hander at Hamilton, out wide onto the curves goes Gus Burton, flashing headlights still, but through goes Kean Jewis. That was beautifully set up. He goes wide into the corner at Hamilton, but keeps it on the sticky stuff and holds that position. So into the lead of the race for the pole sitter Kean Jewis with a beautifully set up manoeuvre. I like the way he was flashing the headlights when he was alongside Gus Burton. There's no way Gus would have been able to see that, but he was so determined to put him off his stride, and that was beautifully set up. He knew he couldn't get at the inside into Agostini, so he went wide on deliberately wide into the corner to cut back on the way into that left-hander at Hamilton, and it worked a treat. There's a tiny bit of contact between that safety car which punched them all up. Somebody's getting a warning. That will be for track limits, no doubt. So the black and white flag being held over the pit wall by the marshal there to let the driver know which of them it is. Get away with it a couple of times and you get a warning, and keep getting warnings, you start to then get time penalties. Matthew Graham with the onboard camera still there in 8th place. Oliver White still doing a good job here to defend from him. Gets on the gas, gets a bit wide though as he makes his way out onto the straight. And then through the left-hander at and Palmer keeps the line. So they head down towards Agostini now, the gap coming down with Matthew Graham, number 16, from a GT racer, right onto the tail of Oliver White. He's going to try the move that we saw for the lead of the race from Cian Duris, going out wide into Agostini, trying to cut back on the exit. But it's a tidier exit from Oliver White than it was from Gus Burton, and he's able to keep himself in front in the number 2 car on the way through the left-hander at Hamilton. 11 3/4 minutes to go, but Graham now goes from the inside line all the way through Oggies and gets through, and gets his nose in front for that right-hander coming up at Williams to cover off the line. So number 16 finally getting ahead of number 2, Graham ahead of White, and onto the Bentley straight. That now puts him up to 7th place, but he's going to have a fair old gap of 2.5 seconds or so to try and make that. On the safety car. So Duris leads, Burton second, Edgerton third, Malin fourth, Martin fifth now in the 10 car, Smalley in 6th, and then with that move that we saw, Graham in 16 ahead of White in number 2 for 7th place. 9th is number 41, Giddings. They're all pros. Charles Rainford, number 99, still leads the Pro-Ams. Josh Malin is getting very close now to the tail of Theo Edgerton. So Malin being pushed on, probably a little bit spooked by the fact that the number 10 car has reappeared in his mirrors, a bit like the scenario we had before the safety car came out. So remember, before the safety car came out, Josh Malin was very close to the tail of Theo Edgerton, and they were both being caught by Will Martin. So I think a recurrence of that battle in the final stages of the race, and a replay of an attempted move at Murray's from Hugo Ellis to get up the inside, which went wrong because he went too deep into the corner, went wide and onto the grass in the number 8 car. So that was down around 2/3 of the way down the field. Worth a try, but it didn't quite work. So just under 10 minutes of the race to go, with 3/4 race distance. Cian Duris, since getting the lead a couple of laps ago, has edged out a 1 second advantage. And well, these Michelin tyres are standing up very well in the heat, because he's just done a personal best lap, 1 minute 51.455 seconds at this late stage of the race. That's on the screen for number 26, track limits warning. So he's pushing on, but he's got to be a little bit circumspect now and stay within the white lines. Track limits at the edge of the circuit has painted white lines on it, and if you keep going over those white lines with a couple of wheels to try and either cut the corner, straight line the corner, or get on the power a bit too early, then you start to get warnings, then penalties. There are track sensors as well, so sensor pads at certain points of the circuit, which automatically pick it up and register which car, well, they're all transponders on all the cars, which car has gone over, and go at the curbs, but you can't put all 4 wheels over the curbs where there are curbs. So racing drivers always trying to straight line corners, always trying to get on the gas too early. You've got to stay within the confines of the circuit. It's something over the last 6 or 7 years in particular, really, it's become a major part of trying to control the racing drivers, and you often see these penalties. You get the warnings, but you get away with it a couple of times, then you start getting warnings, and after a couple of warnings you start to get 5-second penalties, and then subsequent penalties each time you do it again after that. So Cian Duris has to be perhaps a little bit careful now. So 1 to 5-second penalties, only 1.2 seconds up the road from Gus Burton. go. Jewis, Burton, Edgerton, and then fourth and fifth, Malin and Martin.